You like subwoofers, right? You're into subs. Good. You're in the right place. Because I'm going to tell you about a very special sub, a brand new subwoofer from SVS. Now, you know those guys. They're known primarily for their subs, but they also make some pretty terrific speakers. And I'm going to be reviewing one of their bookshelf speakers coming up soon, in a few days actually. But today it's all about the SVS 3000 Micro. And it is a pretty small subwoofer. It's about an 11-inch cube, beautifully finished in gloss white or gloss black. And the price, I'll tell you the price right away, is $800. Now, the thing is, the features are kind of unusual. First of all, it's one of those opposing subs. That is, the drivers on each side of the cabinet. They're two 8-inch drivers, one on each side. And they force cancel. So even when you're playing this puppy pretty darn loud, it won't be shaking the floor. You know, the music might, but not the cabinet of the subwoofer. The subwoofer feels pretty inert even when I was playing it loud. The internal amplifier is rated at 800 watts. That's RMS 800 watts, which is a lot, and then 2,500 watt peak. I don't know whether they do that with subwoofers. It's really big numbers, supposed to impress you. But what really impressed me was the sound of this little guy. Now the amplifier uses discrete MOSFET outputs. Now that's kind of unusual because usually it's a Class D amplifier. This one uses discrete output transistors. One of the nicest features is the app. It's a very well designed app, very intuitive really. And which reminds me that just a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, when I reviewed the KEF KC62, another very tiny but high-powered subwoofer, it didn't have an app, which I thought was kind of weird, meaning you had to get up off your chair, go over the sub, change the level, change the crossover. It's kind of a pain in the ass. But this one, the 3000 Micro, which is about half the price of the KC62, more or less, does have an app. So the app controls, obviously, the volume of the subwoofer, the low pass and the crossover of the subwoofer, the phase, and it's continuous from 0 to 180, or you can flip the phase. There's room boundary equalization changes that you can do, a 3-band parametric equalizer, tons and tons of things. If you like tweaking your sound from the comfort of your easy chair, you're going to have a lot of fun with this sub. Now, I mostly was adjusting volume, definitely, the low pass frequency with the different speakers I use, and I'll tell you about those shortly, and phase, of course. So, and the speakers that I used over the course of this review were, well, actually an SVS speaker. It's called the Prime Bookshelf, the KEF LS50 Meta, and the Bowers & Wilkins 607S2. Oh, and the Klipsch RP600M, because that one, the last one, the Klipsch, is particularly, it's the most bass light of those speakers I just mentioned. So I wanted to see how the 3000 Micro would pair up with a speaker that needed a little extra loving care to make it all come out nice and smooth. And it did. Spoiler alert, it was easy to adjust, partially because of the app, but partially because it's just a really nice subwoofer with all of those speakers. The connectivity suite is pretty straight ahead as subwoofers go. There's stereo RCA inputs, stereo RCA outputs, and one of the stereo inputs can also be used as a LFE, low frequency effects channel, if you're doing the AV home theater thing. Now, it's a thing that I no longer do. I did it when I was writing for magazines and CNET, so I can't tell you how this sub performed in a home theater environment. So, you know, it's a great little sub, but great little subs are not yet the equal, maybe they will at some point, not yet the equal of a big hulking subwoofer, like the SVS SB16 Ultra. That one sports a 16-inch woofer, some massive amount of horsepower. It weighs 127 pounds. So there's, as they say, there's no substitute for cubic inches. If you have a big room and you really want to shake it and have parties and stuff, you still need a big sub. You know, the best thing that my highest compliment to a subwoofer is that I don't hear the subwoofer. Yes, I expect it to make deep bass and be clean and undistorted, etc., etc. But the best thing I can ever say about a subwoofer is it on? Because it really feels like all the bass is coming from the left and right speaker. That's what I want from a subwoofer. And when I can adjust the controls and make that happen, great. Because if I hear the bass coming from over there and the speakers are over there, the illusion is broken. You know, that it's like, why you keep, no, that's a no-no for me. So the first order of business when I set up any subwoofer is to make sure that that happens. It disappears. And I can literally forget, is it on, until I play something that has some deep bass and I go, oh yes, it's on. It was so seamless that I didn't know it was there. That's what I want. The app is terrific, but if you don't want to use the app, you can still control the volume level of the subwoofer, the low pass frequency of the subwoofer, and the phase control directly on the subwoofer itself, on the back of the subwoofer. I'll show you a picture of what that looks like now. And that's nice. But other than making sure it worked okay, I was mostly using the app. But when I was on my hands and knees, down on the floor, tweaking the level from the subwoofer itself, I was aware of some weird little, just faint, but they were there, and I'm just bringing it up because that's what I heard, these high frequency tones, like squirrely, like whoop, 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 sounds coming from the subwoofer's electronics, not out of the speakers, but out of the back of the cabinet. So I started with, the first speakers I paired with the SVS were the Klipsch RP600Ms, as I said, because they make the least amount of bass of all the speakers I tried with the sub. And it was easy to do. I think I was crossing over at about 80 hertz, which is kind of a standard setting. And I was not high passing any of these speakers, meaning the speakers, all the speakers I used for this review were running full range. There was no crossover for the speaker. The low pass means it sets the upper limit of what the subwoofers are delivering. You know, if you set it at 60, that means it goes up to 60 hertz. Does that make sense? I hope so. And the music that I started with was Koyaanisqatsi. It was Philip Glass did a score for a movie, a very bizarre, really cool, like environmental movie called Koyaanisqatsi, which is an Indian word. Anyway, in the movie, the score starts with an organ that's playing very, very, very low notes. And there are these singers or singer going, Koyaanisqatsi, and the organ's going doom, 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 and it like shakes the room. And it is a test of pitch definition of the subwoofers. If it gets blurry as it's descending, it's kind of an iffy sub because it's just getting overloaded. But this sub was right on the money. And it was, when it's all happening with Koyaanisqatsi, it just kind of fills the room, it takes over the room, it becomes environmental in and of itself, and it's really, really cool. And you should check out the movie if you're into that kind of documentary feature that's just, it's all aerial photography, looking at Earth, looking at the ravages of man, and you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, beautiful movie and a beautiful score. And then I went from that into Wendy Carlos did the original score for Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange film. Great film. My favorite Kubrick film by far is Clockwork Orange, although I like a lot of them. But anyway, Wendy Carlos did the score, and she's sort of reworking Beethoven in the movie and stuff. But anyway, the movie came out, the score is terrific. But in the 90s, I think, she remixed the score and put in more of her music that was chopped out of the original score of the movie. And that came out on CD, and it didn't last very long. It was withdrawn quickly, so they're kind of hard to find, and I don't think you can stream it anywhere. I'll show you a picture of what it looks like now. But anyway, and I'll compare the covers to the Orange Clockwork cover and the Wendy Carlos remix cover. And just the way she uses synthesizers, and there's so much texture and nuance and playfulness and weirdness going on in that score. Hers sounds better than the actual soundtrack by far. So anyway, I was given the sub 3000 micro. I'll work out between Koyaanisqatsi and this remixed Clockwork Orange. And I was having a good time. And again, well, the thing about the RP600Ms, when you pair it with a good sub, it sounds like a big tower speaker, or not a gigantic tower, but a much bigger speaker than the RP600 actually is. And over the course of this review, I was playing that combination SVS 3000 and the RP600, and I had this speaker came in for review that I wound up not reviewing, and it was a tower speaker, and it just wasn't cutting it. And I would go to that speaker and listen to that for a bit and go, Then I would go back to this guy, the RP600M and the 3000. I was just like, this is so much better than that very large speaker. This is one of the reasons why I canceled the review, because that speaker was such an embarrassment to me. Anyway, and I will not reveal what that speaker is, so please don't ask, because I don't want to embarrass it. The reason I'm not covering is because they're nice people. I just don't want to hurt them. The thing about the RP600M is, while it doesn't have much bottom end, it has enough. I've listened to it a lot without any subs mostly, but it's so alive sounding. Its dynamic life is fantastic. And when the sub is keeping up with that dynamic impact, like when I played, I'll say it one more time, Explorations in Space and Time, this Chesky recording of a percussion group, it was really thrilling to hear those drums pounding and just feeling the beater hitting the skins was very cool. And the RP600 Micro 3000 or 3000 Micro combination was just killing it, So then I moved the Klipsch's aside and hooked up the KEF LS50 Meta speakers and dialed them in. They went down lower, certainly considerably lower than the RP600. I think I was coming in at about 45, 48, something like that. And I was playing the complete Miles Davis Jack Johnson sessions. And that's the early 70s. He's doing a lot of electric jazz. And there are these tracks on here, and because it's complete, you're hearing the outtakes and stuff. So as they're working out the tunes, and one of them called Go Ahead John, just the sound of this electric bass, and it was thunderous electric bass, big, meaty, just fat sounding, and it was kicking butt. And I'm like, whoa, that is so good. I love my job. It was really fantastic. And this other track, Duran, I don't think this has anything to do with Duran. It was just bass, electric guitar, drums, and then Miles comes in eventually. And just the starkness, Miles doesn't come in for a while, so just hearing bass, drums, electric guitar, and this kind of charged atmosphere was freaking amazing. And I had to stop and pay attention. Oh, what is the 3000 Micro actually contributing to this? So I would actually, there's one thing you can't do is just turn it on or turn it off. So I would just go into the volume setting on the app, take it down to 0, and then listen without the sub, and then bring the sub back in. It's kind of weird that they don't have a way of just turning it off. Maybe there is, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, so it didn't sound gigantically different without the sub, because the KEF LS50s, at least in this part of my room, over here I'm calling it the south end, make a fair amount of deep bass on their own. But having that extra support from the 3000 Micro just gave that bass, I should have wrote down who was the bass player. I really don't know who it was. But anyway, the bass and the drums, just more, grunt, more impact than the speakers could do on their own. Speaking of KEF, I did have the KEF KC62 sub here not that long ago. And that sub was faster sounding. It was more nimble. It just had like a speed in terms of pitch definition and just keeping up with the LS50. It did a better job of that. It is $1,500, not $800 like the 3000 Micro. So there's that. And obviously the KEF combination was part of the design brief, I'm sure, for the engineers at KEF, was make this puppy, the KC62, really sing with the LS50. and it does. And the 3000 micro was good, certainly good, but it wasn't as nimble, as agile as the KC62. So to even up that score, I paired the 3000 micro with the SVS bookshelf prime, or prime bookshelf speaker. Not surprisingly, it worked better. There was definitely synergy going on there. But of course, because of the extensive controls in the app of blending speakers, if you spent enough time and knew what you were doing, you could pretty much get any small speaker to work with the 3000 micro. Really, dial it in just right. But I didn't spend weeks working on this review. I spent a few days working on this review, and I can tell you that getting the prime speaker working with the 3000 micro was pretty darn easy. I was playing this Ginger Baker record, who was a rock drummer for the band Cream, and he made a jazz record with Bill Frisell, the guitar player, and Charlie Hayden, bass player. So they're kind of like a jazz version of Cream. Not really, but a little bit. There was a little bit of that happening there. And that's what I was playing with the SVS combo pack. And Ginger plays the tom-toms. That's kind of his thing, is the thundering, hitting them. And again, the combination of the two just put a smile on my face. And that the SVS Prime bookshelf speaker, not a very big speaker, and I will review that separately soon. And yeah, it gave the bookshelf speaker the stature of a tower speaker. Here's one of my tests for disappearing sub. Is I play a track where the bass instrument on a tune is on the opposite channel as the sub. For example, in this review, the subwoofer was on the right side of the room. So I played a track where the sub instrument was on the left channel. So then the question is, does it sound like all of the bass is coming from the speaker on the opposite side of the room as the sub? And I did that, I should have mentioned earlier, with the Klipsch RP600, because that was the most bass light speaker. And there was no problem. I definitely felt like all of the bass seemed to be coming from the speaker, when in fact, all the sub 80 hertz bass was coming from the other side of the room. So that's a good test of blend. And I don't want to forget to mention that I also use the B&W 607 S2 anniversary speaker, which actually for a little speaker makes a fair amount of bass. And again, 3000 micro, they sang together very, very well. So there you have it. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and this is, without a doubt, the Audiophiliac Daily Show. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. You can hit that button right down there to do it. It's painless, absolutely painless. Just click on that and you're in. But one more thing you can do is hit the bell to be notified. A little bell will appear. Be notified every time there's an amazing new episode. Speaking of amazing, you got to check out the Patreon. If you haven't yet looked, just check it out. There's a link to it below in the description, but I will spell it out because it's kind of a thing that I've done forever and ever. You can get to Patreon at patreon.com/audiophiliac, and yes, there is a link. But while you're here, check out more speaker reviews. Well, speaker reviews and headphone reviews and electronics reviews and of course music reviews plus interviews, but no subwoofer engineer designer type people interviews. I got to work on that in 2021. And now I can say my work here is most definitely complete. So thank you so much for watching, and I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.